Hi everyone, this is Bridget Willer with You Too Can Be a Guru, and I thought I would practice my presentation on Hangout on Air, kill a couple birds with the same stone, about why you should blog. So on my blog post, I have, oops, I've got to practice the time. I'm using my stopwatch. Okay, so we've talked about on bridgetwiller.com, we talked about how to start a blog. And as you know, I'm a huge supporter of WordPress. But this time we're going to talk about why you should blog. And the slides are on SlideShare. There's a link in the description of the video. So why should you start a blog? It is a lot of work. And quite frankly, there's other places to write. There's Medium. There's LinkedIn publishing. There is Facebook pages, Facebook notes. So why should you blog? Why should you blog on your own web property? First of all, I would say definitely you should blog because of a couple of reasons. And the first one is, oops, what is going on? Sorry. That's what happens when you try to do things really cool on your laptop. Where's my next slide? Okay, what is blogging? Blogging is writing that's published on a website, okay? So you can write without ever publishing it online. You can use a typewriter, you can journal. I encourage everybody to write in some way, shape, or form. You can even speak in your phone, and Siri and other apps will handle the actual dictation for you. But writing as a process is really good for a few reasons. And I'd say mostly two, personal and professional. So if you're personally blogging, which I started personally blogging around 1997, 8, something like that. I feel like it's important because writing's cathartic. It helps you process your emotions, and it also develops your critical thinking. It actually is good practice for professional content marketing. So if you're going to start a blog, maybe you should start about something that you're really passionate about in your personal life. And you can always segue into your professional reasons later. So for professional blogging, the benefits are it positions yourself as a thought leader. You can educate your audience on products and services, and of course, exposure. So the more that you write, the more likely that it is that your audience will find you, or that your predetermined audience will read you. Of course, Google loves great content. Social networks live based upon curated content. I mean, Facebook is a giant content curation piece of software, right? They write nothing almost of their own. So let's talk about personal writing again. Writing is cathartic. So what do you mean by cathartic? I mean, cathartic means that it's a release. It's a release of emotions or pressure. So sometimes you just need to express yourself, period, end of story. I mean, if you look at the people who write on Facebook and they're vague booking and they're writing things, you're like, what? Why are you even saying this? Because people just need to get stuff off their chest. When you're writing, it helps you process your emotions. Sometimes when things happen in our lives, we have a difficult time figuring out how we feel. Are we angry? Are we sad? Are we overjoyed? Do we feel betrayed? When you put pen to paper, a different part of your brain is engaged, and you're allowing yourself to think more objectively about the situation. And so writing helps you develop that critical thinking that's so important. Even if nobody reads it, even if nobody reads your blog, what you're doing is you're figuring out how to communicate in a linear, logical way that people can relate to. And that is very valuable if you have any product or service that you want to sell, which is probably why you want to blog and probably why this is interesting to you, right? So if you have jewelry, you can talk about the things that inspire you outside of jewelry making in your designing process. If you are a contractor, you can look at the pain points that your customers have. And all those things are logical lines of thought, right? So what's really important is that you think clearly about what you're doing so that when you're asked, you can give a concise, logical answer. So writing is not a natural skill. I wish that my 8th grade teacher, Mr. Busio, would read BridgetWillard.com. I think he would be really proud of me. I did not get good at writing until college. I had a really good teacher who would not just say expand, but would actually ask the right questions that would help you expand on a certain subject that seemed ambiguous or what have you. My friend Iris, she writes haikus. And so I borrowed this from her. Writing is an art. Writing takes practice as well. Writing is a skill by Iris Messina, a Cinematic Promotions. Writing positions yourself for thought leadership. And this is so important because in a huge sea of content, it's hard to get found. It really is. In many ways, how you're found is by volume. The more regularly that you write, the more regularly that you publish, the more regularly that you talk about the same exact subject, the more likely that you're going to be found. And when people continuously come to you and ask you questions and you're a resource to them, then you're providing value. So think about Gary Vaynerchuk. He has Ask Gary V, One Library TV, The Gary V Show, and all of those things are helping to solidify his brand. So it's very easy when he's giving away valuable content for free to ask you to buy his book. For us, it could be the same thing. So somebody asks me how to use Twitter, and I can say, oh, I have some valuable resources on my website here. And then when they say, oh, would you like to, can you train me? Then maybe if I were doing that, which I don't, but if I were coaching or mentoring or training, then that would be, yeah, I actually am having a class. Would you like to sign up? So you provide the value up front, and that makes it easier for the ask later. When you're writing about a subject and you're educating your audience, you're giving them reasons to ask you more questions. Reasons to ask you more questions means that they have more reasons to engage with you. The more your customer base is going to engage with you, the more likely that they're going to purchase. So that's why it's very important. And I feel really bad about saying so many times. That's your inside baseball thought about me practicing 8 minutes into this. I don't know if I can do 20 minutes. 20 minutes is going to be hard. Okay. Next slide. Live practice with Bridget Willard. Okay. It's been a long time. So content marketing is a fancy term for education. Basically, whenever you're using content to market your skills, you're educating. Now, you could not be educating, but that's very old school. People don't appreciate that kind of education anymore, or that kind of marketing. They don't want to just see the Marlboro man being sexy on a cowboy scene. It's just not, doesn't work anymore. So when you're talking about your product or service, that's going to prompt people to ask questions. And the more they ask questions, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to continue that conversation, like I said earlier. So the other part about education is sometimes they know enough to realize how valuable your service really is. Now, when I was working at the contractor, this was very much a part of our content marketing strategy. People didn't know what epoxy injection was. They thought that they could just repair cracks in their tilt-up walls on their own, and you can't. And it's not just, the other thing is they didn't realize that it was a full width crack. So most concrete walls are 6 inches. And so if you have a crack in your concrete wall, it's not on the surface, it's not the paint, it's structural, it's going exactly through the entire panel. And so what's happening is that's allowing water to enter in, then the rebar will rust, the concrete will disintegrate. So you use epoxy, you inject epoxy in there in order to structurally weld the concrete together. It's actually a stronger weld than before. And so this was a continuous pain point for us. So I thought, what if I interview the subcontractor that does it? And what if I write a blog post on how do you fix concrete cracks in epoxy injection? And I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find it. And here's one of the things that I would like to encourage you about is that just because you wrote something 3, 4, 5 years ago doesn't mean it's not still valid. In this kind of bite-sized world we're living in now, we tend to think that people only care what happened 10 seconds ago. It's all about Chewbacca Mom, and this is her week to be famous on the internet. But next week, nobody will care about Chewbacca Mom, maybe, but maybe people will still talk about that. You never know, right? So in that was just her being silly with her birthday present. But for us, we want to publish continually on our website so that Google will see that we're still relevant. And if people search for how to repair concrete cracks in their tilt-up building, they're still going to find that video. And here's my word of advice and kind of a exhibit A, for lack of a better term. When that blog post was 3 years old, it brought in a lead that grew to the point where the net profit from that job paid my salary for half a year. So it's no joke. Just because something is old, or just because it was your first attempt, for me, that was my very first video. And now I watch and I go, oh man, that was terrible. My hair was terrible. I should have looked in the camera, blah, blah, blah. You have all these self-criticisms, but the truth is it fulfilled the purpose of educating a client base on your services. And therefore it brought the customer to you who didn't exist before, and it created a venue for a conversation. The conversation created an avenue for sales. People always talk about the sales funnel. This was part of the sales funnel. Finding content by finding out what is your customer needing at this moment, writing about it in the context of how you perform that service, and people will find you. Belabored point. Exposure. So for me, blogging totally changed my life. The more you publish about the same thing, the more likely people are going to find you. I was publishing about Twitter. I was making my Guru Minute videos. I was creating a way from being a secretary and an office manager to being in social media and marketing. And it took about 2 years of really hard work and being exposed. What do I mean by this? I mean that I was meeting people, I was making connections, and I was making friends. So long story short, because I met a bunch of people who went to WordCamp, I started going to WordCamp. 3 WordCamps later, I finally built my first site, and my second one, which is BridgetWillard.com. I wrote about that. What's the ROI of 3 WordCamps, 2 WordPress sites, on this blog, BridgetWillard.com. And that was shared by some of the friends I had made Well, teaching and helping people on Twitter. Now, for me, it wasn't about a sale, it was about a career move. But I wasn't thinking, oh, if I tell so and so about this, then when I need something, they're going to be there for me. It wasn't like that, because if you act like that, it's going to be very obvious. I was just being a normal, polite human being. I was just being a helpful person. And I find that if you invest in people and you invest your time, your resource, your knowledge in people, they will also return that favor. And that's what happened. My article was shared with somebody really important in the business I work in now. And then they hired me to start writing for them, and writing, and then more social media accounts and writing. And finally, in December, I was hired full time as a marketing manager. So it was part being helpful, helpful to other people. It was putting that content out there on a regular basis. Now, my blog isn't as regular as other people's are. You should write at least once a week if you can. However, you still need to keep putting out that content, be helpful. That's how exposure works. It's not just, oh, I put this one piece out there and then I'm done. It doesn't really work like that. But if you build your infrastructure with social media, if you're doing all these networking things like attending Rotary meetings and those kinds of things, then you're going to have people that care about you. When you help other people and you publish something, all of a sudden they're going to be like, that's interesting to me because so-and-so was helpful in my life. That's what exposure is. Sure, you're going to be available to the random person who searches paleontology or whatever, right? But it's really about making those human connections along the way. And then when you do publish, they will share with their circles, and they will share with their circles, because you publish good quality content and you've been a person that's been known as a very helpful person. That's what's really important. So about audience. So there's two ways to go about your audience. You can either write and find your voice, or you can go by an audience persona. So I went by just writing. People would ask me questions. How do you do this? Should I use Facebook or Twitter? Why should you use lists? Why don't you use the retweet button? Anything that somebody asked me, I turned that into a blog post. So I just kept writing. Anything that I found even remotely interesting. That's how the Keys to Being Social series was born on my website, because I realized people don't understand reciprocity. And so all of these behaviors that make you excel at social media are the same things that help you excel in social life. So being helpful, having courage, having humility, listening, finding your voice. These are the things that I ended up discussing on the Keys to Being Social series. So once I started doing that, my audience found me. So you can just write and then let people find you, let you give yourself some time to find your voice. Comedians do this all the time. I watched a documentary about the improv, and they said that if you go every week to the improv for 4 years, you'll have found your voice. So in writing, a lot of times that's how it works too. We just have to keep writing and see what happens. And sometimes the more we write, we do find that voice. We're finding what people share. We're finding out what our audience likes because of their commenting. We're finding out what topics work based upon keyword research, or how people are finding us by looking at our Google Analytics. So you can do that. Or if you've been in your business for a long time, like when I was at the contractor, we knew who our audience was. Our audience were building owners who own commercial buildings. Our audience were people in Orange County. Our audience were people who were real estate brokers, because we got a lot of referrals from real estate brokers. So you can fill out your audience personas. You can figure out Bob the builder, Tom the real estate man, those are the people that you already know them, because you can probably imagine who those people are based upon your current customer base. So you can write to meet their needs. You know, what's the biggest problem for a real estate broker? Finding customers. So you can write about that. It all depends on what your business is and what your audience's business is in relationship to yours. When there's an overlap, that's the perfect thing to write about. Now, about audience size. So I told you that blogging sort of changed my life. It didn't matter how big my audience size was. It mattered who was in my audience. Do you see the difference? So you can either go by your audience size, or you and be discouraged, oh, because only 17 people looked at my blog today. That's real life. I mean, I don't write enough. I don't write enough to get 40, 50, 60. I don't promote myself enough to even get 100 people. Maybe I'm not doing the keyword research first. But for me, it didn't matter. For me, it was about the right people, because it doesn't matter if you're getting 15,000 hits and you're getting 0 leads. What matters is the leads that you get from what you write. Do you understand? So what's important is we wrote about our services, the right people found them and hired us. That's what matters. It doesn't matter if it's only 20 people a day. It really doesn't. I think that people get focused on your audience size, and then they are paralyzed by the fear of reaching more people, and then they stop writing. And that's the worst thing that you can have happen in any of these situations. It doesn't matter how big your audience is. It matters who your audience is. So to summarize, the more you write, the better you're going to get, period. So keep writing, keep publishing, add value, answer questions, educate your customer base, find your voice, and your audience will find you. And remember, you too can be a guru. You can find this presentation at bridgetwiller.com. And thanks for helping me practice what 20 minutes is.